The government target to get 22% of new car sales to be EVs this year, 28% next year, might just have finished off Stellantis Group member Vauxhall. They got two plants, one at Luton, one at Ellesmere Port, and their probable failure to meet those targets might mean that it will be cheaper for Stellantis to stop manufacturing in the UK. Just shut up shop, pull out. Mind you, they and many others are already shutting down numerous plants elsewhere across several countries in Europe. Why should we be saved? What would the EV scene be like without Stellantis? Or could this be the straw that breaks the camel's back? The end of EVs. I'm Dave. This is Dave Takes It On. My first thought was, why do some legacy manufacturers struggle to comply while others, like BMW, Mercedes, they're also legacy manufacturers and they've already qualified? Looking at the results so far, bit of time to go, but they're looking good. And the simple answer appears to be that some companies didn't take the threat seriously, others did. Surely they won't enforce this and put us out of business. But that is today turning out to be a very real risk. Well, the UK government does not want to ban all cars, like many of my conspiratorial viewers seem to think. Nor is it compulsion to force people to drive EVs, though most people seem to think this one is definitely true. Well, the real reason is that the UK, like the majority of countries around the world, is becoming more and more concerned about pollution levels in the air that we breathe, and more concerned about the effects of the huge quantities of CO2 gas that we pump out into the atmosphere each year. Whether they are right or wrong, this is what they believe. And having spent decades asking and pleading with, begging industries to voluntarily reduce emissions and reduce CO2, they had to start making laws to force them to do it. Not Labour. This was started by the Conservatives. It was continued by Labour. But if the Liberal Democrats had gone to power at any time in the last few decades, their plans would have been even more draconian. They are all in agreement. This is not a debate as to whether they're right or wrong, but about the duty of any government to protect its population if they think or believe that there is in fact a risk. After years of trying to get the auto industry to reduce emissions, governments around the world have finally stepped forward. We get a gentle introduction to this in the form of environmental zones. Not just here. Environmental zones are also known in other countries as, no, I draw the line here. I can't even pronounce what many of them call it. But those countries implementing them include, obviously, the UK, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Hungary, Italy, Germany, Netherlands, Poland, France, Belgium. The list is almost endless. Spain. There are others around the world that might tolerate the appalling lethal smogs they suffer every year, for example, Delhi and Jakarta. But most are now taking massive and urgent steps. And this is where I get confused. If I asked everyone, which do you prefer? A car that produces toxic, poisonous, carcinogenic fumes and chemicals out of the exhaust pipe that will affect your health and possibly kill your children and your grandchildren, or a car that doesn't? I cannot understand any answer other than the blindingly obvious. Anyway, here is another puzzling question. How does BMW make a profit on their EVs, similar profit to their ICE cars, when Ford loses the equivalent of about $40,000 on every EV sold? Again, the logical answer is that some take the transition far more seriously and some see a brighter future in EVs than to persist with ICE. Stellantis is not one of those. They seem to have believed that no government would actually follow through, would not risk the failure of a massive group like Stellantis. But they might have got it wrong this time. Carlos Tavares, who was CEO of Stellantis, has gone. Sacked or resigned, there are conflicting stories. One said he followed Herman Diess when he tried to steer the entire Stellantis group into going all in on electric vehicles. Others says that he held back the transformation and decided to call the government's bluff. He believed the company to be too big to fail. Well, whichever way it was, he got it totally wrong, and the buck stopped there. In a recent video, I met several drivers of EVs who obviously loved their EVs and would never go back to ICE cars.
This is actually a lease for the salary sacrifice. So my boss came over, probably around October, November last year, and he said, look, this is end of the year, they've got really good deals, so maybe, if you want one, just have a look. So I started exploring, and I settled on this. And I got to pick the delivery of this on 19th of December 2023.
So that was a bit of a shock from looking non-EV to suddenly going, hang on, I can have an EV this week.
Yes. And main reason was, first of all, the saving, the cost, because I managed to save quite a lot of money, on a monthly basis compared to my previous car, which was on finance, petrol, insurance, maintenance, everything on top of.
Because the salary sacrifice is so beneficial,
Yes, it is. And then I'm actually lucky enough to have the access to free chargers at work, so that just makes it, no-brainer.
Right. I also met drivers who didn't like EVs and wanted to go back to ICE. And this is entirely normal. In any paradigm shift, any transformation of old to new, there will be a mix of views, and most views will be right for the people stating them. Not everyone, for example, has a smartphone. Those who haven't, they can still go and buy a good old-fashioned, simple mobile phone with no internet access and missing numerous features. They have that choice. It's decades since smartphones came out. But the CEO of a major international company has a much more of a responsibility to get it right first time. There are thousands or tens of thousands of jobs at risk, as are billions of dollars or euros. These CEOs get paid an absolute fortune, in our terms, millions in basic salary and millions more in bonuses and share options and pensions. Take Carlos Tavares. He got a 36 million basic salary, making him the highest paid in the auto world, although how anyone can call that basic, I'll never know. On top of that, he was offered bonuses, about 10 million, we think, for hitting EV targets and software goals. That was a failure. He was also offered bonuses for specific performance targets alongside share price growth. Yet another abject failure. Shares have crashed. Even President Macron, President of France, was highly critical of that pay package and tried to introduce bills to prevent it. And to make matters worse, Stellantis, it's only a merger of two auto giants, happened just over 3 years ago. I'm of the opinion that many of these auto CEOs like Farley and Barra and Bloom, they've been found out to be, well, not too big to fail after all, and they need to start updating their EVs. They're not too big to fail, and many of them have actually already failed. Well, in massive corporations like these, some involved are absolutely gigantic, and like an oil tanker, they're very, very slow to turn around. A bit like a car on ice, it's sliding, unstoppable, wheels locked, totally out of control towards an obstacle. Occupants are still perfectly safe inside at this moment, but the outcome is set in stone, or should I say, crashed into stone. It is going to happen, can't stop it, it just hasn't happened yet. Now, with all the money they have made and all the expertise they've built up over 100 years, you would think that they could work out a successful and profitable future, but no. And the problem often is inertia. Put simply, if you've always done it this way and always had a successful outcome, successful business, always made a decent profit, allowing for the payment of huge salaries and bonuses and share options and dividends, why on earth would you change? Just keep doing what you've always done. But change is happening, like it or not. Stellantis is looking to close factories in Italy, Spain, UK, Poland, Detroit. Ford is closing one in Michigan, laying off 4,000. In the latest round, VW is negotiating the closure of 3 factories, losing about 10,000. The list is endless. And while many will state that these factories are EV factories that were built in the belief of a healthy, booming market, they are actually not. Many of the factories are currently or were currently making ICE cars. The reason is actually really easy to see. Forget all the financial headlines, all the legacy auto releasing, showing increasing profits, gross margins. Look at the number of units sold. Count how many cars are being made and sold. That is a very, very different picture. The peak for numbers of vehicles sold occurred way back in 2016, and we've not got anywhere near back to that since. Not even 2022. See, we had COVID, factories closed, sales dropped down very low. 22 was ideal as a time for a massive revival to tackle the huge pent-up demand that must have built up over the previous 2 years when people simply couldn't buy new cars in the same numbers. In some cases, you couldn't buy cars at all. The demand should have been absolutely huge, and the industry actually geared up for a huge demand by hiking prices to absurd new levels. It didn't happen. Well, the profits went up, sales went down. Clearly, something different was happening. Sales of ICE cars were going down steeply. First, they were just selling less. People were actually buying less cars, less ICE cars, full stop. But secondly, some of the people who previously bought ICE cars switched to EVs. In 2022, it's a very small number, but you could see that growing. Electric powered vehicles, that number is growing. The shrinking ICE market is now really easy to understand. Now, the original car market, way back in the 50s or 60s, established something of a pattern. You see, you run your new car in gently and then trade it in every 2 or 3 years, just before bits begin to fail and costs begin to rise. The motor industry produced the perfect business model. Offer a 1-year warranty on a car that would likely have multiple failures as early as the 2nd or 3rd year. There was built-in obsolescence. Your customers had to keep coming back for more and more. Those that didn't were forced to repair them back then using your mechanics and your replacement parts. Those that used their own parts or labour also usually had to buy them at that time from you. Triple win. Then they went and spoiled it all by themselves. Engineering standards improved, warranties grew longer, cars just got better, and that better product now didn't need to be replaced. Car with a 3-year warranty transferred the cost of replacing failed components from the driver straight back to the manufacturer for an additional 2 years. So to keep costs down, they built better cars that didn't fail as often, thus destroying the need for their buyers to change the car every 2 or 3 years. And once they began to offer 5 or 7-year warranties, and the financial argument switched around 180 degrees in a classic double whammy. Better made cars did not need to be replaced as often. And as things went wrong over an increasing period, the manufacturer picked up an ever-increasing bill. Well, to anyone who looks at the auto industry from the outside with an open frame of mind, it is really easy to see this was totally unsustainable. Then additional changes came along in the law. They forced manufacturers, for example, they forced the warranties to remain valid even if the driver used third-party components and third-party labour. The business model was now collapsing, but still the industry rolled on doing the same old, over and over. And if profits dropped, just cut costs still further and then put up prices still further. I'm sorry, but the legacy auto business model was destroyed actually decades ago. Now, lately, it's been destroying itself at an ever faster pace. To make better profits, you cut costs, but cutting costs means you'll get more failures within the extended warranty period. The costs of honouring the warranty added to the loss of profits from servicing and maintenance, and the loss of profits from no longer supplying the factory replacement components and repairs now regularly wipes out the total profit made in the lifetime of that car. They have to put the prices up to just break even. EVs did not finish the world ICE car industry. They had already done that by themselves. COVID and supply chain issues helped in that decline, but again didn't cause it. EVs in a serious number came along much later on and then just merely sped up the collapse, but they didn't cause it. In fact, it actually showed legacy auto the way out of their mess. Tesla launched the Model 3 2017, an EV that instantly went on to become a worldwide bestseller. That showed the legacy industry that the market was actually still there. It showed that if somebody made a compelling, affordable car, there was an active market for it. Legacy should have taken the message on board and reacted. Not EVs, it should have stopped making the same old, and introduced something brand new, exciting, different, bold themselves. Not talking about EVs, could have been anything, I don't know, and I'm not even going to suggest because time's passed, but for decades the legacy auto treated model refreshes as an excuse to just bump up their prices and get people to trade in their older cars. But in a bid to cut costs, that reason had long since disappeared. New models and facelifts were in reality very little different from what the customers were already driving. And if the price to trade up rose to many thousands or even sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, the motivation to change up to the new model or refresh model simply wasn't there. Legacy Auto completely ignored these facts, stuck in the past, head buried underground. They were, and in fact still are, of the belief that buyers trade in the cars every few years, will pay thousands to do that, will always favour the brand that they've always known and trusted. ICE cars have run their course. They had a really good century of success, created some absolutely massive company giants, and made many people very rich. Stellantis and other auto giants might well believe that they are the future, that they are too big to fail, that their buyers will see sense and return, that EVs are a passing fad. ICE cars are the long-term future, and that the best course of action is more of the same old, same old. Just look at your smartphone, tablet or laptop in your hand, or the TV you're watching this on. That will tell you whether they're right. Enough said. I'm Dave.